Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Blockdyke,
Here.
Commissioner Eglin,
Aye.
Commissioner Sarkia,
Here.
Vice Chair Hamel is absent, Chair Heady.
Here. Reordering of the agenda. I don't think there's anything to reorder. Presentation, and we go to the approval of the minutes of the last regular Planning Commission meeting of July 18th.
I'll make the
2019.
motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Okay, public comment. Seeing no public. Okay. Consent calendar, none. Continued public hearing, none. Brings us to resolution number 1905. A resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Buellton, California, considering recommendations to the City Council on revision to Title 19 zoning of Buellton Municipal Code 19ZOA-01 relating to accessory dwelling units, amending sections 19.02.110, residential zone allowable land use and permit requirements, 19.04.142, number of parking spaces required, 19.12.020, definition of specialized terms and phrases, 19.6.010, purpose and applicability, 19.16.014, inclusionary zoning, 19.16.020, secondary dwelling, deleting title and text of section 1906.180, secondary dwelling, and replacing with new title accessory dwelling units in text and making findings in support thereof. Whew. Could we have the presentation? I know, thank you.
All righty. Thank you, Chairman Heady and members of the Planning Commission. I'm just going to make a very, very brief presentation because everything was pretty much laid out in the staff report and the attachments. But just really quickly, by way of background and putting this into context, as we all know, the lack of housing supply and affordability in California has become increasingly problematic, and communities have looked for alternate ways to meet the varying housing needs of their residents, which include elderly, low-income, and other economic groups. And secondary dwellings, which have been referred to throughout the years as second units, in-law units, granny flats, and most recently accessory dwelling units on single-family properties are emerging as a viable alternative and affordable housing type. And they provide an opportunity to maximize and integrate housing choices within our existing neighborhoods. And we actually can count it as part of our housing element goals towards providing housing. And the state of California has really been encouraging this type of housing, the secondary dwelling type housing, and since 2003, they've passed numerous bills requiring localities to allow secondary dwellings and increasingly restricting local ability to impose like burdensome regulations for homeowners to obtain these type of permits. The most recent changes to the state law became effective in 2017 and 2018. The changes require that secondary dwellings now officially be referred to as accessory dwelling units, and there has been a new definition added for the ADU, which I will go over. The changes also require local jurisdictions to incorporate state mandated standards into the local ordinances. And these are all intended to further streamline the approval process and encourage ADUs. So I'll run through the highlights of the state mandates. Parking requirements are one of the main ones, and for both attached or detached ADUs, they've reduced the parking space requirement to one space per bedroom or unit. For ADUs within existing space, so this would be like an integrated ADU within a residence, a garage conversion, or an accessory structure, no additional parking spaces may be required. And if an existing parking area, such as a garage, is converted to an ADU, the replacement parking spaces, basically the replacement of the parking spaces that are lost due to that conversion. So those replacement places may be in any configuration on the lot, including tandem parking on the driveway, which is where the cars are parked from front to back. Another change is that
Spaces
That-
may be required.
ADUs must now be allowed in all lots zoned for single-family or multifamily residential use, and which include a proposed or existing single-family dwelling. So prior to this point, in the city of Buellton and prior regulations, we were only required to allow ADUs on lots zoned for single-family. So now, this new regulation, the new state mandate requires that any residential lot that has an existing or proposed single-family dwelling on it may be allowed to have an ADU. And finally, one of the other changes is ministerial permits. This has to be processed ministerially. It's not a discretionary permit. We have to have a review and approval within 120 days of the application without a discretionary review. And these are required for both ADUs within an existing space and ADUs that comply with the development standards that are set forth in the ordinance.
Just so that means it will be approved or disapproved by the planning director? And not going to be for a public hearing?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. The fees also must be proportionate to the burden of the ADU. So the permit fees, meter fees, they must be proportionate to the burden that is being imposed by the ADU, and it may not exceed the reasonable cost of providing service. So local ordinances, the state has given the cities the right to adopt certain local standards. Otherwise, the cities must apply the state ADU standards. So up until now, the city of Buellton has just been applying the state ADU standards in the interim period between 2017 and now, since these new state laws went into effect. But we're bringing the ADU ordinance before you now in order to allow for us to impose the certain standards that the state allows us to impose. And the state law also authorized the California Department of Housing and Community Development to review and comment on the local ADU ordinances. But the way they set this up is that the local jurisdictions can first adopt the ordinance and then submit it to HCD within 60 days following adoption. So there have been some instances where the state has come and said, well, we'd like you to make some changes. So it's possible, I don't know why they did it like this, but this has been the process. So it's possible that there may be some minor changes that we may have to do, and in which case we would, depending on the changes, bring back substantive changes to the Planning Commission. I've summarized the proposed zoning code amendments, and I'll go through some of these in more detail. And the first three are the main ones: zoning districts. So we've added zoning districts where the ADUs are allowed. Parking spaces, we've added a section on the number of parking spaces allowed specifically for ADUs. And then under specific use requirements, we've changed, so this secondary dwellings, which is what we refer to it currently, we've retitled that to read accessory dwelling units and restated the text in compliance with the state requirements. I won't go through in a lot of detail unless there's questions on this. Definitions of specialized terms and phrases. We've clarified those definitions that are applicable to this amendment in order to be consistent. And there were sections of the affordable housing chapter that also needed to have cleanup for consistency. And this very last item on secondary dwellings, again, we changed the title of that to read accessory dwelling units, and just referred back to the previous section, which was, this was really a duplicative section, and restated everything in the previous section. So we deleted a lot of duplicative text there and just referred back to the previous section that now is in compliance with the state. So let me just go through, highlight the changes we added in addition to the RS zone, we added in the RM zone and the PRD as the zones where accessory dwelling units are permitted. Previously, it was only the RS zone. And we added to the parking ratio table in the zoning ordinance this row, well, the land use title and then the row that applies to either the attached or detached unit. And as I mentioned, there's one space required per unit in any form, covered, uncovered, tandem on driveway, in addition to the parking required for the primary dwelling. And the parking may be permitted in the setback areas, excluding the front yard setback areas, the non-driveway front yard setbacks. The next section is added to our zoning ordinance where it states that no additional parking is required if any of the following is true. We added this because it is part of the state requirements, but none of these really apply at the current time to Buellton, so that really won't be a big difference there. And I did previously mention this, but when a garage or parking area for the primary residence is used for an ADU, replacement parking is required on a 1-to-1 ratio, and it may be provided in any configuration on the lot. So probably the biggest change occurred in this particular section, 19.06.180, which was previously titled secondary dwellings, and now it's called accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. And a new subsection was added to this for definitions, and it defines several terms specific to accessory dwelling units, but the main difference here is that the definition for accessory dwelling unit has been changed, and it is now defined to mean an attached or detached residential unit. And I've underlined the other changes. It includes permanent provisions for living, sleeping, eating, and cooking. And the ADU definition also includes an efficiency unit and a manufactured home. And this is important, and you'll see why in a couple of slides. The lot standards, the minimum lot size remains the same as it currently is at 6,500, but only for attached ADUs. We are proposing a new minimum lot size of 8,000 square feet for detached ADUs, because a detached unit, we were looking at how these could fit into lots, and if you're detaching a unit, you have to have certain building separation, and we just felt that it's reasonable to have a minimum lot size for those types of detached ADUs. It's a little bit larger than the 6,500. The ADU may not cause the overall development of the lot to exceed the maximum lot coverage and open space standards for the applicable underlying zone, and only one ADU will be allowed on any one legal lot. Development standards for the ADU itself, minimum size of 400 square feet, except for efficiency units, the minimum size is 150 square feet.
You gonna fit a fridge in there?
Yes, it has to be a totally self-contained unit, and these
Wow.
are minimum standards that are established by the state housing code.
So
And-
that's state mandated?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's state mandated, and manufactured home, which are manufactured homes that are modular homes that are brought out on wheels, and those can be a minimum size of 320 square feet. And again, these are state mandated, so that's a little bit of a difference from what we've had before in the definitions, even though we were really required to comply with those requirements previously as well. Anyways, for a traditional ADU, though, is the maximum of 2 bedrooms. Maximum height shall not exceed the primary unit, but a detached ADU shall be only 1 story. And the increase in floor area shall not exceed 50%. So this is a state, part of the state ADU law also. Currently, our code limits the maximum increase in floor area to 40%. So the state law is bumping that up a little bit. But the maximum increase is 1,200 square feet, which is currently allowed by our code as well, so that maximum hasn't changed. Design and impacts of the ADUs, they must be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, our design guidelines, and the primary dwelling unit. There shall be no excessive noise, traffic, parking, or neighborhood disturbances caused by the ADU or adverse effects on public services. The ADU may not be sold or financed separately from the principal structure, but may be rented or leased. No short-term rentals.
How do you police that?
I'm sorry?
How do you police the short-term rentals?
Well, short-term rentals currently are not allowed by code, by our ordinance. We have an ordinance that doesn't allow short-term rentals within the community, regardless of whether it's an ADU or a regular, single-family home.
Well, how do you find these people?
Well, in the past, it's been complaint-driven.
Okay.
And this last one is a change from what we currently have, is that the applicant for the ADU must be an owner-occupant of the existing unit. And we included a provision that this may be waived in hardship cases, but what we're trying to go for here is that ultimately there's a deed restriction that needs to be recorded that either the primary unit or the ADU would be occupied by the owner or their family member. And just a statement for consistency, the amendments are consistent with the general plan, the housing element goals, and Title 19 of our municipal code. And these types of amendments are statutorily exempt from CEQA review. They have specifically exempted the adoption of local ADUs, ADU ordinances from having to go through a CEQA review. And the recommendation of staff is for the adoption of resolution number 1905, which Chair Heedy has read in for the record. But in essence, what this is a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending to the City Council that these amendments be adopted. So there would be subsequent hearing before the City Council and a first reading of these proposed amendments, as well as a second reading before City Council. And with that, I'm available
Questions
for
for
any
staff?
questions.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What does an efficiency unit look like?
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one.
Small.
So,
Yeah, but
yeah,
Is it like
it'd be a small
those
studio.
little trailers over at Flying Flags? Or smaller than that?
but it's a stick built, right? I mean, because
Well, the efficiency units are just, they have to meet those requirements. They're usually very small, like a
Right.
tiny home or, yeah.
Like the ones over where you live, Bob?
It's with your body in
They
there.
call the
The
mother-in-law homes?
The casitas.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I mean, those would be a small, could be a small efficiency.
As
unit.
small as
Yeah,
150 square feet?
So just for comparison, the newer, as you were mentioning, Commissioner Sarkia, Flying Flags, the new ones that have gone in are just under 400 square feet.
Whoa,
And so, as Irma mentioned, efficiency units can be a minimum of 150 square feet. So you probably won't get all of them that
So
small, but.
less than half of that, ones we see over Flying Flags.
Well,
Doghouse.
I'm not doing this, but I thought I had a question to ask too, because I've gone down the VRBO road and I have a granny unit. It's just a bedroom with a bathroom. It's smaller than 200 square foot, I believe. And Now, VRBOs are out, of course, they're not allowed by law in Buellton, but there is something called homestay, and homestay is legal, isn't that correct?
I would need to look into that, because I'm
That's
not familiar
what
with
I
the definition of
understand. So
homestay.
as long as there is an owner-occupied dwelling, so there's an owner there, you can rent out a room as a homestay. Well, since my room doesn't qualify as an accessory dwelling unit, actually, it's just a bedroom, correct?
Oh, you mean a homestay within your
Yeah,
home?
yeah, or in the little casita that's not big enough to be an actual accessory dwelling unit. Yeah, just
Interesting,
clarifying.
interesting
What would be
question.
the term on your homestay?
What's that?
What would be the term of the rental?
Oh, it could be anything. Yeah, it's a homestay. It's not a VRBO.
Yeah.
Code.
I think we'd have to look into
Yeah,
we
the
don't have
definition of
anything
homestay and what
mentioning
that,
that.
Yeah, I checked into that a little bit, but I'm not interested for myself, really.
But it's a very good question,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we will look into that and provide a report back.
And then you answered another question for me too that I was concerned about was the owner occupancy requirement. I was concerned that the owner could live in the accessory dwelling unit and not in the house. I could see a person who's getting older. He's he's lost his spouse and he doesn't want to live in the house anymore. He wants
Right.
to make the money off it. And,
Correct.
And it's permitted now, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay, makes
Yeah.
sense.
And they're
Either
saying
way.
it is permitted, so I'm good with that part.
Yeah.
So.
yeah.
If you want to live in
But I was
150
concerned
square
about
feet.
that part.
And this has no effect on non-permanent structures that people may or may not be staying in?
Could you state that again?
So that this has no.
Oh.
Let's say I build a shed, and technically it's a non-permanent structure, and I throw a fridge in there and some other stuff, and
I think it's probably wrong on a number of levels.
Well, if it's not a legally allowable habitable structure, it could become a code compliance issue.
okay.
I went to a nursery once where they had tents on the back of the property.
Oh, cute.
And people staying there.
Well, I think this. I mean, I'm surprised. After living in Montecito for almost 20 years, this is extremely flexible.
Now, I have a question about what happens with HOAs. Like Rancho de Maria does not allow you to convert, in their bylaws, convert your garage. Does this supersede those?
No, and I happen to have an answer only because I've been doing some research on this, and people have asked those questions. HOAs quite often have deed restrictions on the entire property, which
Yes.
can supersede state
Really?
state laws.
Wow.
And this, I
Well,
think, is going to
Montecito's
come
an
back.
example for this.
I can see this coming back as an issue.
Yeah.
I bet so. I know there's some, the
But,
late Rancho de Maria lots probably don't meet the threshold of 6,500 square feet because they're pretty small lots. But
Right. But I have been going through a lot of questions that people have asked and various responses. So this is a general response that I've seen that, HOAs in many cases, depending on
Yeah.
how the CCNRs are written, that they could restrict this even further, and the state,
we'll see where that goes.
we'll see what happens, yeah.
Okay. Other questions of staff? Well, I'll open the public hearing. And seeing no things, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission.
I was gonna run out there and get some.
Any comments? I think, I'd like to thank staff for all the work. It
Yeah.
seems like this was a lot of work.
That would be my comment too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
You're gonna read it again.
No.
You want to make the motion this time?
Sure. Do I have to read the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay, a motion to adopt resolution number 19-05, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Buellton, California, considering recommendations to the City Council on revisions to Title 19 zoning of the Buellton Municipal Code 19-ZOA-01 relating to accessory dwelling units, amending sections 19.02.110 residential zone allowable land use and permit requirements, 19.04.142 number of parking spaces required, 19.12.020 Definitions of specialized terms and phrases, comma, 19.16.010, purpose and applicability, comma, 19.16.014, inclusionary zoning, comma, 19.16.020, secondary dwellings, semicolon, deleting title and text of section 19.06.180, secondary dwellings, and replacing with new title, accessory dwelling units, and text, semicolon, and making findings in support thereof.
Could you repeat that last one? I'll second that.
Okay. Could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Eglin?
Yes.
Commissioner Blockdyke?
Yes.
Commissioner Sarkia?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair Heady?
Okay. Thank you for the work on that one.
Welcome.
Other business? I see none. Written communications? Don't see any. Planning Commission comments?
It's been hot.
Yeah.
It was a smooth presentation.
I'd like to just say that looks like a lot of work being done by the contractor all around town. And all the concrete work. And now, is the city knocking down the trees in front of Anderson?
Yes,
And they're knocking those down because they're pulling up the sidewalk?
they will be replaced.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Something more, you'll talk to Commissioner Blockdyke down there about the appropriate,
I haven't really been
Hey,
looking
isn't that
at
a conflict of interest?
on there.
Not to give an opinion,
Any other comments?
as long as I'm not selling it to them.
Planning Director report.
Okay, so we have coming up on the next city council, or on the September 26th city council meeting, we have the 65% construction drawings for median 2. Since you've last seen it, there's really been no substantial changes to the overall design. These are just at this point where they are moving into, the engineering drawings and the more detailed design drawings for construction. So that'll be going on September 26th coming up. And additionally, I just wanted to announce that we have hired a new assistant planner. She has officially accepted the position, and she will start on September 16th. So we're really happy to have her on board and excited to.
You're really happy.
So, and we will have a meeting on the 19th, and she will attend, likely attend. So you get to meet her. And
Where's she from?
She lives in Santa Maria, and she went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo.
Oh, okay.
So that's all I have.
Just a couple of questions. What's with all the buildings by Tractor Supply? I see some work where the pizza place was supposed to go in, but do they have issues still? They have
Yes. So Crossroads. Yeah, they are getting closer to a solution to what's been going on there. There's several things, but they're getting closer, and they're working with staff on rectifying those. But it's been an ongoing issues, but we're getting closer. So.
Just amazing. So many vacant spots there.
For so many years now.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, 3 years old? 4 years?
Probably about 3. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay.
We do have the CUP.
Oh, yes, yes, thank you, Irma. The Crossroads in Pad A, which is along McMurray Road, we have received an application for a cottage urgent care facility, which would occupy 3 of those units in that pad there. I'm just currently reviewing the application and getting some additional materials for a complete application to then bring to the commission
So that would
at
be
a future meeting.
division of Cottage Hospital?
Yes, it would be an urgent care cottage hospital or cottage-run urgent care facility.
I will let my wife.
And then,
No kidding.
are we going to have a little ceremony if and when the new little park opens up?
I would hope so. I'd have to check on, usually we do with those types of things, but
Okay.
I'd have to check to see with, the details of that, so.
Right. Any other? With that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:33.